Good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's Common Council meeting. Roll call, please.
Fire. Here. Paschal.
Here.
Rosendich.
Here.
Bargander.
Here.
Wagner. Here. Witzel.
Here.
Fisher.
Here.
Spiros. Hendler.
Here.
Did you get Becky?
Yep. Mhm.
Okay. Please stand for the Pledge of
I didn't
Allegiance.
say anything.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item C, public comment. At this time, the mayor will recognize members of the public who have indicated their desire to address the council. Upon recognition by the mayor, persons may address the council first, stating their name and address. The council may take action on emergency matters introduced by members of the public. Anyone from the public wish to address the council? Seeing none, we'll move on to item D. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the November 9th, 2020 budget meeting and November 10th, 2020 regular meeting? Motion by Mr. Fisher, a second by Mr. Fire. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, roll call vote, please.
Fire.
Yes.
Paschal.
Yes.
Rosendich.
Yes.
Bargander.
Yes.
Wagner. Yes. Witzel.
Yes.
Fisher.
Yes.
Spiros.
Yes.
Budke.
Yes.
Hendler.
Yes.
Thank you. Item E, any staff updates?
Thank you, Mayor. Just one quick one, just to announce to the council again and also to the public watching us on TV, Facebook, YouTube, whatever, that there will be a special meeting of the council on Monday night at 6 o'clock. Here, it's strictly about the budget. It'll be the public hearing, get a chance as citizens to, bring up your comments and concerns. And then there will be consideration of the 2021 budget and tax levy. So that's here at 6 p.m. on Monday night, the 30th.
Thank you. Any other staff updates? Item F, mayor's comments, employee recognition, Christopher Christensen, street department, 5 years. That is all for me. Item G, any council comments? Comments from the council? Seeing none, we'll go on to item H, any reports from commissions, boards, or committees? Seeing none, we'll go on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to receive and place on file, approving all actions in the recommendations in the consent agenda? Motion by Mr. Witzel, second by Mr. Fire. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, please vote.
Fire.
Yes.
Paschal.
Yes.
Rosendich.
Yes.
Bargander.
Yes.
Wagner. Yes. Witzel.
Yes.
Fisher.
Yes.
Spiros.
Yes.
Budke.
Yes.
Hendler.
Yes.
Thank you. Item K, presentation, update on the concerns regarding COVID-19, introduced by Steve Barg, City Administrator.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I think we all know what's going on with the COVID-19. Cases are increasing and there's more hospitalizations and serious concerns. And we have representatives tonight, and we're thankful for this, from Marshfield Clinic Health Systems. And they're going to be speaking to us. I think they've got a short video as well, just on what they're facing right now, some of the concerns and issues that they're dealing with. And so at this point, I'd like to turn it over to them, and hopefully the technology will work well.
I guess a person from the clinic can go ahead and present unless you want me to show the video first.
If you could show the video first, that would be great.
David, can you make sure Ops 1 is on? We can't hear the. Yes. Okay.
It would be like this. The last couple of months, I've been working closely with the staff. We started with a mix of med-surg patients and ICU COVID patients, and now it's completely an ICU unit. We see patients coming into the unit without oxygen, and their lips and fingers are blue, and their O2 levels are in the 50s. The staff do what they can, and whatever is best for the patient. But at times that is all they can do. It's a waiting game, and the patient's conditions quickly change. It would be like this. The last couple of months, I've been working closely with the staff. We started with a mix of med-surg patients and ICU COVID patients, and now it's completely an ICU unit. We see patients coming into the unit without oxygen, and their lips and fingers are blue, and their O2 levels are in the 50s. The staff do what they can, and whatever is best for the patient. But at times that is all they can do. It's a waiting game, and the patient's conditions quickly change, and that makes staff on edge. Staff are working long hours with limited resources, sometimes without breaks. They're doing the jobs of 10 people and are scared for the patients. They report to work, and the patient is always their first priority. Nurses are picking up extra shifts, working 16-hour days, up to 8 days in a row, because they feel guilty that their coworkers are working short in an already stressful situation. Staff are in tears because they feel like they're not getting the care that they normally would because time is tight and resources are low. Patients are lonely and they miss their loved ones, and the families are feeling the same. The frontline staff are feeling this void. They're trying to hold it together, but they're literally being pulled from every angle. Leaders are trying to help, but we feel like we're letting down our crews by not being able to give more. As encouraging as I try to be, I'm becoming exhausted and bitter like my crew because of how COVID has affected us. When the pods went from 2 patients to 13 over a weekend, my panic set in. I would help answer phones, grab medicines, do anything I could to help the staff. In my spare time, if I had any, I would try to improve things so they could take a few less steps. At the end of the day, I would go home and go straight to the shower. Part of this was to protect myself and my family, but the other part was so people cry in the shower and finally release. I'm now in a more numb state, but I wonder how long we can maintain at this pace before we crumble. And who will want to be in healthcare after this is all done? And what kind of PTSD will we all suffer? I worry about us as a whole. Staff have seen too many people die of this virus. Granted, this week I had 2 patients who were able to go home after being in the hospital for 20 days, which was a huge win. But having 3 patients pass away in the same day cuts way more deep. And these are just the ones at my unit, not in the rest of the hospital. They're carrying the burden of watching someone else die alone, hungry for air, while they themselves are concerned about their own safety and loved ones. Many of the staff are pregnant, have immunocompromised loved ones, or small children that are always on their mind. I know nurses, two this week, who have been working with COVID patients and have had somebody in their family pass away. Yet they're still here working. We have seen patients go from talking, then to having anxiety, and then to coding. Despite CPR efforts, we cannot save them. Watching them do CPR for 40 minutes on a patient in full PPE is not only exhausting physically and mentally, but it's hard for us to watch. When they're finally told to stop, their N95s literally have horrible sweat. And they are drained. Yet those same staff go and continue to care for the rest of the patients. Are we going to be able to keep up this pace? Or when will staff not have energy anymore? We have helped too many families come in and see their loved ones for the first time since being hospitalized. And it is also their last time. Families have to make decisions for their loved ones and to let them pass as comfortably as possible. Telling families that they shouldn't hug or kiss for safety reasons feels wrong. Having to be the decider of who gets to see their loved one is something that I never wanted to be part of. And this isn't something that shouldn't happen. But COVID is controlling us right now. My colleagues and I are stuck between a family's last goodbye versus protecting our staff and community from potential exposures. I know this won't end soon, and my only hope or request is that you offer a hand when you can. Every little thing adds up, and it could be the one last thing that keeps us from falling. We are a team, and this cannot be done in fragments. We are responsible for working together and rising up when we feel like we can't anymore. Our patients depend on it.
Thank you. That was a presentation given by Teresa Weiler, who is one of our nurse managers on the COVID unit. She gave that presentation to our system leaders last week. By way of introduction, I should tell you that my name is Bill Melms, and I am the Chief Medical Officer for the Marshfield Clinic Health System. We have a sign in our hospital that says "Heroes Work Here." And we believe that people like Teresa and her colleagues are all heroes. But they are starting to feel not quite as much like heroes anymore. They are exhausted mentally and physically. It's tough taking care of a COVID patient. It's tough because there are times, as she mentioned there, that we get to send people home, and usually we do get to send people home after their hospitalizations for COVID. But the real tough ones are where all we can do is provide comfort to that patient and relieve their suffering while they die. And that happens too often. The pandemic is continuing on. Our health system and Marshfield in particular are pretty much paralleling the state. If we go back 6 weeks for hospitalizations, 6 weeks from then until now, we've had an increase in numbers by about 100%. And that is consistent with what's going on in the state. We continue to have a significant number of new positive cases each day. Yesterday, there was a little dip. Today, the number was back up to 6,000. We've had several days in Wisconsin of 7,000 new cases. And the problem is these new cases, they drive hospitalizations, and that drives ICU visits and stays, and that drives deaths of our patients. We continue to do a lot of testing in our lab. We do, last week and the week before, we did 13,000 tests for the state with a positivity rate around 25%. This last week, it was down a little bit to just over 10,000 tests with a positivity rate of 21%. we don't see an end to this pandemic. In fact, we are looking at some grave concern coming with Thanksgiving weekend. We expect that families will be getting together. That will result in more transmission, and we will have some worsening of the surge in the coming weeks. We are fairly convinced of that. Our staff is under a great deal of pressure, as Teresa had mentioned. And also, we have many of our staff out at any one time. We may have 10 or 15% of our staff out because they have tested positive or because they've been exposed to COVID, and this is troubling as well. We're working to get traveler nurses into our system. They are rare. They're hard to get because surging is occurring now around the country. Back in March, when we watched New York surge, we actually had several of our staff travel to New York to volunteer to work there. We were very proud of them. And I remember thinking as I was watching that if we ever surge, then people from around the country will come to help us too. The problem is that those people are busy at their homes, helping their home states, helping their own patients. So we're sort of on an island here in Wisconsin, and that's the way it's going to be for some time. With that, I guess I would want to open it up to see if anyone had any questions for me. We certainly appreciate your support. We believe in masking. We believe in social distancing. We would like to see people not spend Thanksgiving with their extended families. AAA had a statement earlier in the week that they were expecting a 10% decrease in travel this holiday season. I can tell you that we need a 90% decrease in travel this holiday season in order to decrease the number of positive patients and then the number of hospitalized patients that will continue to put a great deal of stress on our healthcare systems. With that, I would certainly entertain questions if that's what you would like to do. Otherwise, I appreciate you listening to me.
Any questions? Mr. Butke.
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank you and your staff for the awesome job you are doing and have done. Couple concerns, however. I was told by a doctor that Marshfield Clinic and Hospital no longer checks staff daily for COVID. And what's concerning about that is I have a brother-in-law that just had surgery, and he found out today that somebody in the recovery room, a staff member, had COVID. They don't think that there's an issue with him because of the personal protective gear. But yeah, this doctor I talked to, and I will not mention the name, but that's troubling to me that you're not checking staff as they come in. I've been there, and everybody the temperature was checked at least, and that's troubling to me.
I appreciate your comments. Let me clarify that. All staff is checked daily. Some check themselves. Every morning when I come in, and I come in through the east entrance, and I get my temperature taken and I get my symptoms asked because I don't do the procedure that I would otherwise do at home. We have a procedure through our HR tool. It's called RedCap. And all staff go through at home. They either go through an entrance where they get checked like I do, or they do the RedCap at home where they do the symptom list. They are required to check their temperatures at home and record their results, their symptoms, their temperature in the RedCap tool so the record is created. So our staff is checked daily. It's just that they're not all of them are checked on site.
Well, then apparently this doctor from your facility's lying.
Probably he misunderstood.
Any other questions from the council? Questions or comment? Seeing none? Mr. Witzel.
Thank you. I don't know if this is information you can share or not, but can you give us an idea of what current level of hospitalizations are and what you anticipate in the next 4 weeks?
Yeah, I sure can. In our health system right now today, this morning, we had 121 patients in our health system, and that included 47 here in Marshfield. We've actually, this week, we've had a dip in the number of patients, and we sort of believe it's kind of the eye of the storm. If we go back 8 days, we had 155 patients in the system and 74 here in Marshfield. We expect, as a result of the Thanksgiving holiday, we will see that trend sharply upward, and it'll take 1 to 2 weeks to reach that. When we were at 155 patients, we were at a point on the curve that was very steep. And at Instant Command, we reached out to all of our regional Instant Commanders at all of our facilities and said, you know, we have 155 in now. Within a matter of weeks, we could have 300 in. So we need plans on how you will take care of 300 patients in our system. We will not be surprised to see 300 at some point in December. I really hope we do not, but there's every reason to believe we will.
Thank you.
Anything further? Rebecca.
Yes, doctor, can you tell me how long is it taking you to onboard new nurses if you are getting recruits in there? How long from the time that they come in are they able to get up onto the floors and be functional?
If we have, if we are getting experienced traveler nurses in, they're getting on the floor immediately. Very brief orientation. These people are experienced. So they work side by side with one of our nurses, but they're pretty quickly on their own.
Okay, just to follow up if I can, I'm a nurse myself. I've been one for 30 years, and I know that a lot of things that slow people down is learning the charting.
Yep.
Nurses come in and do the work, you know, but the charting is what slows them down. So I didn't know if that was a possibility of bringing people in and assigning them a scribe to do their charting so that they could just really primarily be focused on.
Yeah, you're not the first person to ask about scribes, and we don't have them right now. But what we are doing to try to allow our nurses to be extended, to have their reach extended, is that we do have a program in our organization called Helping Hands. And what that consists of is anyone in our organization. You could be a receptionist, you could work for environmental services, be a cook, whatever. You can volunteer to work in the hospital. And in doing that, you are essentially doing jobs that the nurses are asking you to do to provide an increase in their reach. And that's been an invaluable program that we expect to be expanded. And, you know, it's about personnel. And I've been asked several times, do we not have enough space? Do we have enough space for all of the patients in our system? And the answer is, yeah, we can always create more space. What we can't create are the people to take care of these patients. And so we're doing the best we can by redeploying our own staff, looking at agency staff. We have a request in to the federal government right now, to FEMA, for additional staff that we're waiting on that response. So we feel like we are going at this from all the directions that we can.
Thank you.
Anything further? Mr. Wagner.
Thank you. Doctor, is there anything specific that you would like us to do? What can we do to help?
I appreciate you asking that question. You know, we certainly would like you to advocate for our patients, advocate for public health, advocate for the recommendations from public health, for the governor's request that we will all wear masks. We would like to see, you know, my Thanksgiving this year is my wife and my daughter. And normally we have an extended family. It's a great time, but we're looking forward to, in fact, we talked about this, that as soon as we can, maybe that's May, maybe that's June, that's when we're going to have Thanksgiving, and we're going to have it with everybody. So please promote these principles. We would greatly appreciate it. reach out to your legislators and ask them to promote these principles as well. If you know of organizations, if you know of companies and businesses within Marshfield that are not requesting their employees or their patrons to mask, please ask them to do so. This really could help save a life. We really want to decrease the pressure on our staff. We don't want to have 300 patients in our hospital in a few weeks.
Mr. Bargender.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question for the doctor. How does convalescent plasma help hospitalized COVID patients?
You know, I wish it helped more. We certainly have administered it. In the trials of convalescent plasma, the results have been less than what we would like to see. There are two new treatments that have been just recently given emergency use authorization that involve monoclonal antibodies. But those are, and one of those preparations was given to President Trump when he was hospitalized. What's been found for those is they work best in people that aren't that sick yet. So what they're indicated for are for people that are not hospitalized yet, but of high risk for hospitalization. And there does seem to be some benefit. But plasma has not necessarily panned out to the degree that we really were hoping for in the beginning of all of this.
All right, anything further from the council? All right, seeing none, thank you very much for taking the time to give us that presentation tonight.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we will move on to item L, request to approve budget resolution number 07-2020, transferring $20,000 from the Airport Capital Outlay Fund to purchase a credit card reader for the Marshfield Municipal Airport, presented by Jeff Geyer, Airport Manager.
Good evening, everyone. Budget Resolution 07-2020 is transferring $20,000 from the Airport Capital Outlay Program to buy a credit card reader that is used at the self-serve fuel pump. The original fuel pump was established in 2008 with the help of federal and state funds, and we've been notified that it is no longer being supported. We contacted the Wisconsin Bureau of Aeronautics to ask them for their assistance in funding a new system. And because we're not the only airport that use federal and state funds, they've been working with all the airports. They told us just go out and buy it because of COVID, and they'll reimburse part of the expenses like they usually do with the federal and state funds that they have available. It could be 90% that they'll refund. It could be 80%. We're not exactly certain yet. Where the money is coming from in the capital outlay program is earlier this year, the airport was eligible for $30,000 in CARES funding. We applied for that, we received it, and it was put into the capital outlay program. So that way we have it available if we needed to do projects in the future. Any questions?
No, sir, you looking to approve budget resolution number 07-2020? I believe he is. Is there a motion by Mr. Wagner, second by Mr. Peschel? Any discussion? Seeing no, Mr. Wagner.
Yeah, and in case you didn't catch that, we got that grant from the feds, and we're using that to pay for this credit card reader, and the other part of the federal government is going to give us somewhere between 75 and 85% back. So that's sort of a nice thing. We don't have to spend our money, and we get it back anyway.
Mr. Bargender.
Thank you. Question for Jeff. When someone purchases fuel, is there a fee for using a credit card at the card reader?
There are fees, just like any business. There would be, depending on what card they use. This particular credit card system is designed for aviation. So in addition to Visa, MasterCard, Discover, American Express, it accepts certain aviation cards as well that usually pilots carry with them. So like when an emergency med flight helicopter comes in the middle of the night, they're usually carrying an aviation card instead, that because they're purchasing large volumes of fuel. So some of these credit cards are designed to handle that amount.
Just follow up. So the airport itself does not charge anyone to use the machine.
The Marshfield Airport receives 7 cents a gallon for every gallon pumped at the airport.
Okay, I guess what I'm getting
However, the fuel.
Go ahead.
The fuel sold at the airport is provided by the fixed-based operator. They receive all the fees and costs for the fuel, and then they in turn reimburse the city 7 cents a gallon for everything pumped out of the system.
And where does the 7 cents go?
That I don't specifically know where it goes finance-wise. I can tell you the FBO pays a check every month to the city, and I'm not certain. I'm assuming the general fund.
I guess the point I'm getting to at here is that if there would be a way of banking some of this money for future purchases of these credit card readers, because it seems like if you need one every 15 years, the next one will probably be $30,000. Yeah, I get it that the federal government's kicking in at this time, who knows 15 years from now. So, I guess I was just kind of wondering if there was some type of fee that the airport could charge, maybe 50 cents a dollar, and put that money in a fund, and then if it would be needed in the future to purchase a new machine. That was my comment and questions and comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Fire.
Yeah.
Facial.
Yes.
Rosendish.
Yes.
Bargander.
Yes.
Wagner.
Yes.
Witzel.
Yes.
Fisher.
Yes.
Barrows.
Yes.
Budke.
Yes.
Henler.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries. Item M, introduction of ordinance to replace repeal Chapter 15 of the Marshfield Municipal Code, Building Code, presented by Josh Miller.
Thank you, Mayor. And as you said, this is just an introduction to this item. Typically, we just have a first reading and a second reading, but because we're doing this in December, we'd be doing it within back-to-back weeks. And I wanted to give the council more time because this is a more in-depth item than we usually ask you to review and approve. So the primary purpose of this change is to really overhaul and update the code so that it's consistent with current applicable codes and standards. So the Safety and Professional Services chapter of the statute, state statutes. We do have these already adopted by reference. So SPS 320 and those in 320 through 325 are already adopted by reference. However, in this code, we would be linking to those sections in the SPS. And we'd also have hyperlinks in the code that link directly to specific sections. So when there's questions about certain inspections, it'll go right to that section. It doesn't just reference things. It's kind of a more up and coming code. Another reason to modify the code is it hasn't been updated significantly since 1982. So we've had some minor changes and things like that, but really haven't kept up with changes throughout the last 30 years. So this code would apply to both residential and commercial. Right now, our Chapter 15 primarily applies to just residential development. And we reference the SPS codes by reference, but that's about it. We are proposing to move a couple sections to other chapters in the municipal code. So like the moving permits, we feel like the actual moving of a house, which requires a public hearing, we're moving that to Chapter 18, which is a zoning issue. The actual moving of the building on public streets would be moved to Chapter 13, which is a public works issue. So trying to make put these sections of code in the right places. We also have a section that would identify pre-1980 construction in the UDC, and that is different because the standards were different. And so we're not requiring pre-1980s construction to meet the current standard because it's almost impossible or very challenging to do so. So providing exceptions for that. Also have sections to deal with temporary structures, manufactured homes, accessory buildings, and decks. And what's new to this new chapter 15 is a property maintenance code. So we talk about, we're looking to adopt the 2015 International Property Maintenance Code. And it's a pretty standardized code that a lot of other communities have adopted. And so one of the ways that we're adopting it is, you can do it a couple different ways. You can adopt it by reference and then adopt different sections that you're either omitting or changing, and you just highlight that in your ordinance. And so that's the way we're doing it. That's the free way to do it. You can otherwise spend thousands of dollars and have them customize it, and then you've got a brand new code. Regardless, you have to adopt it first to make sure that those changes are applicable, and then they would customize it for you. So we can always go back and customize it once it's adopted and get a clean code. In the meantime, we do have a couple of these hard copy versions, and otherwise it'll be linked to our website, so you'll be able to click on the website and then find the different sections of code. So you'll be able to go through that and identify that. And I know Alderman Wagner has talked about this property maintenance code probably for 4 years now, if not longer. Since I've been in this position, it's been discussed, and we haven't had time to really get to it until now. So that talks about enforcement. It has full definitions, so it's consistent definitions, so we're not just creating our own definition for the code applications. It deals with exterior property areas, so you talk about yard areas and junk and things like that. It deals with exterior structures, so, talk about siding and paint on the outside. And so these address a lot of the things that I've heard from concerns from aldermen. We have more teeth to address things now with this International Property Maintenance Code. So it'll be a benefit for the community and that. So that's really what I kind of wanted to do, just give an introduction. I'm nervous with the technology to try and go through the hyperlinks and stuff like that. But if you click on the link in the code, they're all linked in the PDF that you're able to download. You'll be able to go through the International Property Maintenance Standards. You'll be able to see the sections, the inspection section, and that. So if there's any questions between now and the first reading, I'm happy to kind of walk through. Pat Kilty will be here for the readings. He's the commercial inspector, the supervisor for the inspectors. He knows he put this together. I'm just kind of, I've walked through it with him, but I don't know it like he does. And so he'll be able to be here for those readings and answer any questions that you have. So just wanted to give an introduction and kind of encourage you to take a look at it. And we're excited about it. It'll help us out. But happy to take any high-level questions, or if you have concerns right now, we'll bring them back.
Questions for Josh? All right, seeing none, Josh, thank you very much. Go to item N, request to approve resolution number 2020 ratifying emergency proclamation of the Chief Executive Officer of COVID-19 presented by Steve Barg, City Administrator.
Thank you, Mayor. We went through this back in March, and on March 17th of this year, the mayor signed an emergency proclamation regarding COVID-19. That proclamation provided tremendous authority to deal with things that might come up as a result of our COVID-19 response, included things like making purchase of equipment and supplies. I think there was actually a $50,000 limit. There was discussions of staffing needs and other things. And so it was pretty broad. The council then 2 days later on March 19th ratified that with resolution 2020-09, continuing those. The principle here is that the mayor's proclamation is good until the council can next convene, and then the council needs to take action to make that a longer lasting initiative. This time around, we actually had a meeting of the Emergency Management Government Committee as set forth in Chapter 7 of the City Code, and I want to thank Councilmember Wagner for pointing that out. I've been here 10 years, and I was unaware of that group, and now I know fully what that group is about. So they met last Tuesday and believed that this was appropriate. The mayor then did sign a proclamation, and this was more limited. All I was seeking at that point was a proclamation that would allow the closure or further restrictions of our buildings and facilities. The notion here trying to keep citizens safe and perhaps more importantly, trying to make sure our staff is safe because we're having people out because of COVID. Either they were being quarantined due to exposure to others or whatever they were dealing with. And so we were beginning to have a struggle with bodies to do the work. I understand the library was running into similar circumstances, so I wanted the authority to work with our department heads to limit access to our facilities, even close them to the public in order to deal with that. So what I'm looking for tonight is the approval to continue that. Don't know what that'll mean. Maybe it'll mean going the other way at some point and relaxing the restrictions. Maybe there's other buildings, but we need to tighten it down even further. But the problem is it's 2 weeks between council meetings. In fact, if you look at the calendar, we're having our second meeting in December on December 15th, and our first meeting in January is January 12th. That's 4 weeks. And a lot can happen in COVID-19 world over a 4-week period. So the request is to allow the continued authorization for me to make those determinations from now through January 12th. At that point, the resolution would terminate unless it's re-upped, if you will, by this body. But there would not be there's no request for any further types of authorization for other types of actions as a result of this. I do want to give credit and a shout out to Ron Allman, who I think at least was on the call a minute ago, and that is we've received over $300,000 of reimbursement through the CARES program, through the work of our great department head efforts in keeping track of all the expenses, working with Ron to collate and submit those and being reimbursed by the state grant. So that's been wonderful for our finances. And but we don't expect any of those types of expenditures. If we do, we'll continue to keep track of some of them, and perhaps it sounds like the grant may go forward at some point. But just looking for authorization to deal with the facilities and building.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve? Motion by Mr. Barkender, second by Mr. Peschel. Any discussion? Mr. Wagner.
Yeah, Steve, this is an interesting time period to have to do this. I support it very much, but is there some special arrangement you're going to have to make for people who want to come in and pay their taxes? And also, I guess, starting December 1st, I think is when people start taking out papers to run for council. Is there any provision? Are they going to have to call in and make an appointment to pick up the papers and that sort of thing?
Great question. Yeah, we are looking for people to make appointments. Initially, we talked about closing the doors right at the front, that very front door, but we realized that there was reason to allow people to get in that first set of doors. Part of which is, we're here tonight in this room, but also to be able to meet with staff, perhaps in the public conference room on an appointment basis. And that I would think, especially for the people maybe looking at filing papers for public office. We're still working on the tax collection issue, which will be coming into play come mid-December, and trying to work out the best approach. I've seen a lot of emails going back and forth by our staff, and I applaud that. And we'll report what that's going to be. But we are making provisions as best we can to take tax payments. Of course, we've been trying for a number of years to try and encourage more people to use drop boxes to mail in, and we mail receipts back to them. But there'll always be a certain number of people who want to come in person to make that payment and get the receipt. So we are making arrangements for that as well.
Thank you.
Any further questions, Mr. Witzel?
Thank you. I think one of the reluctance, I think part of the problem with just dropping a payment in a box is that I think a lot of people want that paper receipt for their taxes and to have some sort of proof. So I think that that's going to be something we're always battling. That would be the only concern I have when I found out that we're having a difficult time staffing the front desk. To me, it's a no-brainer. You got to do what you got to do. Just to clarify, this really basically is only to look at fluctuating access to buildings. It doesn't get into purchasing and all of the things that were really encompassed in that initial, because we really don't see that that's an issue. Okay, thank you.
Correct. And we've had to work out issues. We've talked about vendors and deliveries and those kind of things. So there've been a lot of little things we've had to address, and we're on top of that. Back to your tax collection thing, I'm told that our staff does the best job possible of getting receipts back sent out to people, but there is a delay, I'll admit, and hopefully people are accommodating to doing business that way. We'll get out those receipts as soon as we can.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing no further questions, roll call vote, please.
Fire.
Yes.
Peschel.
Yes.
Rosendich.
Yes.
Bargander.
Yes.
Wagner.
Yes.
Witzel.
Yes.
Fisher.
Yes.
Barros.
Yes.
Budke.
Yes.
Pendler.
Yes.
Thank you very much. It passes unanimously. And item O, discuss plans for the council and committee meetings moving forward, presented by Steve Bard.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, just like the whole COVID conversation we just had is a throwback to the late winter and early spring of this year, this conversation is as well. If you remember, we kind of scrambled. Ing did a wonderful job in getting us set up with the technology to make remote meetings possible. The question is now, what do we do, if anything, to change that in the new environment we're in with some of the COVID increases in cases and some of the intensity of what's happening, as was mentioned earlier by a representative from Marshfield Clinic Health Systems. So I talked about with staff, and I think our recommendation would be that we go back to more virtual meetings. Now, I know when we did that, we still had maybe the mayor and a council person or two in this room as part of it, but most people were participating from home via their computers. I think we ought to get back to that. I think it makes sense to have as few people here as possible. The questions that come up along with that, though, and I think it's for council and committee meetings, the questions that come up is, number one, public participation. I know we tried a couple of different things. We tried a call in line that people could call during the meeting and get on public comment. We probably tried other things too. That's perhaps a struggle. We want people to be able to participate in our meetings. At staff level, we talked about trying to get that through written communication, email, or letters, or perhaps contacting a staff person who can transcribe that and find a way to bring that forward to the council without someone being in front of the elected officials. We definitely don't want to cut off public comment entirely, but it does become more challenging. We really benefit from not having that many people coming into this building during a time of a pandemic. So that's one question I think we need to wrestle with. Another is what it means to our volunteer advisory committees. When this broke back in late March and early April, what I talked to our staff about was, if you're a liaison to a committee, historic preservation, park recreation, and forestry, take a look at some of the agendas. Maybe some of the meetings don't need to be held. There are some committees we have where it seems like some of the same items come up from time to time, and maybe you could take a month off. Otherwise, try and see if we can get as many people in the public as we can to participate via Zoom. I know that causes some concerns for technology because sometimes the internet connections aren't great, and it creates some technical problems. There may be some other ways we can accommodate that, but I guess what I'm looking for tonight is whether or not you are feeling, as staff is led to feel, that we ought to be trying to promote as much virtual as we can, given where we're at right now. And that would start with the council and the council subcommittees, the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee and the Board of Public Works, having as much of a remote presence as we can.
Thank you. Questions from the council? Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm supportive of the idea of going to virtual meetings, but I feel strongly that we have to find a way to engage the public if they want to make public comments. Not everybody is going to feel comfortable logging onto Zoom, trying to call in. Not everybody is going to feel confident, even, I believe, writing a letter. And so I think we need to find as many different avenues as possible to allow people to speak. And I do think cutting off completely someone being able to walk in the building to even make a public comment, I do find a little concerning if that person wants to do that. I understand the risk involved, and maybe there needs to be discussion of capacity in the room, but I would hate for someone to want to make a public comment, not feel comfortable with using a phone, writing a letter, but they'd much rather just come in and publicly speak, even if it's to the computer screen at that podium. I just feel we need something in place to make sure that if someone wants to make a public comment, they are fully engaged in the government process. And there's a feeling of, I have had my say. Thank you. If I can, one other question. The public hearing on Monday, I would like to know what the plan is, because if you've been online, there's a lot of people not happy about the budget increase. So I was personally anticipating there might be at least some people coming to speak on that. What are we doing for that meeting if this passes?
I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you. I did put in the memo, but I didn't include in my comments a minute ago. This would be effective, any change we make December 1st, the day after the public hearing and the approval of the budget. We put this out on November 14th and told the world, you can come here on November 30th and raise your concerns. And obviously, this is a tax rate increase that we haven't seen for some time. So that meeting will be held very similar to what we're doing right here on Monday, November 30th.
Other questions, comments from the council? Mr. Witzel.
Thank you. I definitely think that, any of the committees that are primarily volunteer individuals, historic preservation or any of those types, I think that they should be provided with an opportunity and perhaps encouraged, especially with some of the demographic that are in those committees, but, you know, be encouraged, be provided an opportunity to do those things remotely. I don't have a problem with council members who wish to be remote. This is the biggest gathering we have. All of our smaller committees are half this size or less. So it would be nice to still have an opportunity if we wish to come in and participate in person versus remotely. But I don't have any problem with some of my colleagues who wish to stay home and log in remotely and do it that way. That I don't have a problem with that. I just don't want to make it a blanket that nobody's allowed in the building at all.
I think when we went through this back in April, almost every meeting we had at least a couple of elected officials who came here in person. I felt more comfortable being in this room. And I don't think that causes a big problem. Were there any concerns that came from that? Not really. So we can, you know, those who would like to do that can continue, and those who want to participate remotely. But my thought, I'll be honest with you, my thought is that the lion's share of it would be people participating remotely at that point. I will say one more thing about the committees. And again, you know, we talk about the internet connection that some people might not have a very stable one at their homes, and how that would play out for the kind of meetings you're talking about with Parks, Recreation, and Forestry, Historic Preservation, those types of groups. Perhaps a conference call setup is possible, a call-in number, I don't know. But I think it would behoove us to try and do what we can to keep those folks from coming here to the conference room or coming even to the council chambers, and finding another way to hold those meetings if they're needed.
Mr. Wetzel.
Thank you. One more follow-up. I would encourage any of my colleagues, don't play hero. I mean, if you're feeling in a situation where you're thinking that you may be slightly under the weather, stay home. I, about a month ago, was remote for one of the meetings. It wasn't because I was specifically quarantined. It wasn't because I was sick. But I respect you individuals here. And because somebody close to me was quarantined and I didn't want to even remotely take a chance, I chose to go remote. So I would encourage, regardless of what committee you're on, use your best judgment and go remote if you even think there's a possibility.
Anything further? Steve, does that require a motion? Or
you know, I guess if it's a general consensus, if I see people nodding, I don't know if it requires a motion or not. I mean, actually, the request I'm bringing forward isn't 100% firm. There's a little bit of fudge room in it in terms of how this plays out. So if I see heads nodding and it seems like this is where people want to go, that does it for me.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Item P, adjourn to closed session under Wisconsin Statutes Chapter 19.851E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specific public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons are involved. Review lease extension of property located at 305 West 3rd Street, and review purchase offer for property located within TIF District number 7, and closed session under Wisconsin Statutes Chapter 19.851G, conferring with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or likely to become involved, update on employment law matters involving police department, update on status of collective bargaining with the police union. Is there a motion to go into closed session? A motion by Mr. Wagner, is a second by Mr. Rosendich. Seeing no discussion, roll call vote, please.
Fire. Paschal.
Yes.
Rosendich.
Yes.
Argander.
Yes.
Wagner. Yes. Witzel.
Yes.
Fisher.
Yes.
Barros.
Yes.
Budke.
Yes.
And Hemler.
Yes.
Thank you very much. We are in closed session. Do y'all need a